Jessica's heart raced as she moved through the crowded gala hall, the sound of laughter and clinking glasses filling the air. The bright lights overhead sparkled like stars, each table decorated with elegant centerpieces, but her mind was elsewhere. She felt a knot tightening in her stomach as she scanned the crowd. An old friend had invited her to this charity event for mental health awareness, a cause close to her heart. It was a good cause, but the familiar faces around her reminded her of a past she couldn't shake off. She spotted her coworker, Sarah, laughing with a group of people, completely unaware of Jessica's unease. With a deep breath, Jessica forced a smile and made her way toward the back exit. "Hey Jess," Sarah called out, her voice bright and cheerful. "I just need some air," Jessica replied, her tone barely above a whisper. She didn't elaborate, she couldn't. The truth was, she didn't want to be at the gala, surrounded by memories of better times long gone. As she reached the back corridor, she felt a sudden chill run down her spine. It was quieter here, almost too quiet. The faint music from the main hall faded into the background, replaced by the sound of her own breathing. She turned to head further down the corridor when she suddenly froze. In front of her, a plaque hung on the wall, glinting under the low light. It was a donation plaque showcasing the names of those who had contributed to the event. She read the words slowly, her heart dropping with each syllable. Her breath caught in her throat. There it was, his signature, James Parker, the name she had not seen in years. The man she once loved, the one who vanished from her life just when she needed him the most. Memories flooded her mind, soft whispers in the dark, laughter shared over coffee, and dreams that had felt so real. And then his sudden departure, leaving her alone to face the fog of grief and confusion. Panic surged through Jessica. Why was he here? Did he know that Amanda's family had organized this event? She felt her hands tremble, her thoughts racing. Memories intertwined with anger. Did he even care? She wrapped her arms around herself, trying to ward off the cold that was settling deep within her. Just then she heard footsteps approaching. Jessica turned her head slightly. It was him. He walked through the doorway, his tall frame silhouetted against the soft golden light from the hall. She wanted to run to hide, but her feet felt glued to the floor. James looked different. Older perhaps, but still the same man who had once held her in his arms. The world around her faded, and all that remained was him. The knot in her stomach tightened even more, and she felt her heart pounding in her ears. He stopped when he saw her, surprise washing over his features. His voice was tentative, almost as if he couldn't believe it was really her. "I didn't expect to see you here," she replied, forcing the words out, though a flood of emotions was rising within her. Anger, confusion, and a little bit of relief. "I wasn't sure I would come," he said, stepping closer. Jessica shot back, her voice sharper than she intended. James ran a hand through his hair, a sign of his own vulnerability. "I thought about you every day. I'm sorry for how everything ended." She felt her heart flutter at the sound of her sister's name. Amanda was never just a name, she was a force, a light in Jessica's life dimmed too soon. "You had your reasons," Jessica replied, trying to stay composed, but tears threatened to spill. "I didn't have a reason good enough, Jess," he said softly, stepping closer. "I was scared." Jessica's voice cracked, scared of losing me. Silence hung between them, heavy with unspoken words. James looked down as if searching for answers in the ground. "I didn't see it then." Jessica's mind raced back to her darkest moments after Amanda's death, the nights she spent staring at the ceiling, wishing for just one conversation, one shoulder to lean on. "You left when I needed you the most," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I know," he replied, voice thick with emotion. "And I hate that I hurt you. Protecting me from what? Pain." "That's life, James." His eyes fell to the plaque again, then back to her, a conflicted look brewing within him. "I didn't want to be a burden." Jessica shook her head. "You weren't a burden." The vulnerability between them stirred, and for the first time in a long while, Jessica felt a flicker of something stir within her. Could they rebuild what had been lost? "Look, I don't expect you to forgive me right away," James said, desperation lacing his tone. "But I want you to know that I've been trying to make amends, volunteering for things like this." A bitter laugh escaped her lips. "Penance." James fixed her with an earnest stare. "I don't think anything can undo what I did. But every time I sign that plaque, every time I help people, I hope it brings some healing." Jessica felt tears trickling down her cheeks, and for a moment their anger turned into a shared understanding. She realized he was hurting too, grappling with his own regrets. "You think you can just walk back into my life and make it all good?" "No, it's not," he admitted. "But I'm hoping to try. Can we at least talk?" It was like a punch to the gut. The raw honesty in his words stirred something deep within her. She struggled with a rush of conflicting emotions, the hurt, the betrayal, and the flicker of love longing to rekindle. Before she knew it, she found herself answering almost involuntarily, "Maybe we can talk." James's expression brightened, yet concern clouded his eyes. "I need more than time," she said, knowing it was true. "I need honesty." James nodded, his expression solemn. As the silence lingered between them, Jessica felt an unexpected warmth take over her heart. It was terrifying and comforting all at once. To stand face to face with the man she once loved, whose absence haunted her, was like walking on a tightrope. But maybe, just maybe, it was possible to look back and understand. Healing could come in unexpected ways, and it began with a conversation, with the courage to face the truth. As they began to navigate their uncharted territory, the sounds of the gala fell away. It was just them, two lost souls finding their way back. Little did they know the journey ahead wouldn't be easy, but at least they would embark on it together. Jessica stood at the entrance of the gala, bustling with laughter and the clinking of champagne glasses. She scanned the crowd, her heart racing for reasons she hadn't fully explored yet. Everyone looked so happy, dressed to the nines, yet she felt like a ghost wading through a sea of vibrant souls. She could almost feel the weight of her past pulling her down. Just then she spotted a familiar face across the room, Sarah, her coworker, waving enthusiastically. Jessica managed a small smile but felt her heart sink. This charity event was supposed to be uplifting, a gathering for mental health awareness, yet all she could think about was the heaviness in her chest. With determination, she turned her back to the crowd and slipped through a side door leading to a dimly lit corridor. It was quieter here, a stark contrast to the lively gala behind her. She walked quickly, eager to escape the noise, when suddenly a plaque caught her eye, shimmering under the soft glow of a single light. In honor of Amanda Miller, it read. Jessica stopped dead in her tracks, her eyes widened as she scanned the names below, each one a tribute, each name etched in silver. Her heart dropped when her gaze landed on the final signature. There it was, unmistakable, James Parker. A rush of memories flooded her mind like a tidal wave, crashing in overwhelming force. James, the boy she'd loved, the man who left her without a word. She felt her breath hitch in her throat. Why was he here? Why now? Did he know that Amanda's family had organized this? Panic prickled the back of her neck. Just then, footsteps echoed down the hallway, pulling her from her thoughts. Jessica turned, her stomach twisting with anxiety. As he stepped into view, she felt her heart skip and then race. It was him. James, looking different yet the same, as if time had carved his features, softening some edges while sharpening others. He said, disbelief in his voice. Caught between wanting to run and wanting a million answers, she swallowed hard. The name felt foreign yet familiar on her tongue. He took a cautious step forward. She tried to keep her tone nonchalant, but the tremor in her voice betrayed her. James glanced at the plaque, and Jessica could see the weight of regret wash over his face. She scoffed. The sharpness in her voice surprised even her. Eyes reflected a mix of hurt and understanding. That's not fair, Jess. Best for me you left me. Silence filled the space between them, thick and heavy. James rubbed the back of his neck, clearly struggling for words. I was a coward. Jessica shook her head, a bitter laugh escaping her lips. You were running away from everything, including me. I needed you, and you were nowhere to be found. He said, his voice low. I didn't know how to cope, and when Amanda, I just couldn't face it. The mention of Amanda sent a fresh wave of pain through Jessica. Her sister had been a light in her life, and losing her felt like losing part of herself. You think it was easy for me to process her death alone? James's gaze softened, revealing a vulnerability that brought her a moment of pause. I wish I could take it back, I really do. I thought about you every day. A mix of anger and sadness swirled within her, battling for dominance. Every day, you think that makes it better. You had every chance to reach out. Silence doesn't mean I forgot about you, he said, stepping closer, trying to close the distance that had grown between them. Jessica could feel the weight of his words pulling at her heartstrings. The truth was, she had never truly let go of him. Their years of laughter, late-night conversations, and dreams about the future played like a film in her mind, yet the memory of betrayal twisted in her gut. Should have tried harder, she whispered, the fight in her voice slowly evaporating. I know, he replied, a crack of guilt in his voice, but I came here tonight to support the cause, to honor Amanda's memory. His sincerity pierced through her anger, leaving her vulnerable. And what do you want, James, to make amends? Her voice was stronger now, challenging. I want to understand. He paused, catching his breath as if the weight of his words was palpable. I want to be part of your life again. Jessica's heart raced. Could they really repair what had been broken? She felt an ache growing in her chest, a yearning buried beneath layers of hurt. He reached out tentatively, as if testing the waters. But I want to be here for you. A flood of emotions washed over her, unstill and chaotic. Jessica inhaled sharply as waves of hurt mixed with hope crashed around her. What if I can't forgive you? Then let me be a part of your healing, he replied, his eyes locked on hers with unyielding honesty. I want to prove that I can be better. She thought about Amanda, about the love they had both lost, and realized she couldn't just push it all away. Asking for trust, even if it takes time. Just then, the sounds of laughter and music from the gala seeped down the corridor, pulling her back into reality. Jessica felt torn, her heart caught between the past and uncertain possibilities. She took a step back, collecting her thoughts. I don't know if I'm ready for this, she admitted quietly. But I can't pretend I don't feel something. I just... Scared is okay, he said softly, a hint of relief in his voice. It means you're still human. We're all scared sometimes. Jessica nodded slowly as she processed his words. One moment she was lost in grief, and the next, here he was, offering her a tentative lifeline. Then let's take it slow, she said. I can't jump into anything, but if you're serious about being here, maybe we can talk. A light sparked in his eyes, one that hadn't been there before. I'd like that. She turned her gaze back to the plaque, illuminated beautifully in the dim light. Amanda's name stared back at her, a bittersweet reminder of all that had been lost. She would want us to understand each other, Jessica said softly. And I hope that she would forgive me for what I did to you both, James replied, his voice a whisper. They stood there for a moment, two souls intertwined in a painful history, but with the potential for a new beginning. As the music from the gala ebbed and flowed in the background, Jessica felt the weight of years slowly lifting. Maybe it wouldn't be easy, but perhaps together they could find a way to heal, to remember Amanda, and to discover what was still possible between them. With one last look at the plaque, Jessica turned toward James, her heart daring to hope for a path forward. They took the first steps together, fragile but determined, ready to write a new chapter forged from the ashes of their past. Jessica's heart raced as she made her way to the back of the crowded gala, a whirlwind of emotions churning inside her. The soft glow of chandeliers reflected off elegant dresses and polished shoes, but all she could feel was the weight of memories pressing down on her. Laughter echoed around her, mixed with the sounds of clinking glasses, but it felt worlds away. Hey, Sarah, her coworker, waved excitedly from across the room, oblivious to the storm inside Jessica. She managed a tight smile, but the urge to escape was uncontrollable. Taking a deep breath, she slipped through a side door into a dimly lit hallway, eager to find some space to think. The air was cooler in the corridor, a stark contrast to the heat of the party behind her. Jessica leaned against the wall, trying to shake off the emotions swirling in her mind. This gala was meant to honor her sister Amanda's contribution to mental health awareness, but instead it felt like a wake for a relationship long gone. Just then something caught her eye. A plaque hung on the wall, its surface polished and gleaming with the names of donors. She walked closer, her pulse quickening. The first name was familiar, but as she scanned down the list, her heart stopped. There it was in neat, confident handwriting. Panic flooded through her, her body froze. Memories of laughter, dreams, and late-night conversations rushed back, crashing over her like waves. James, the man who disappeared when she needed him most, the man who had once held her heart. Why was he here, and why now? Suddenly, footsteps echoed in the corridor, breaking her reverie. She turned her head, dread pooling in her stomach. Just as she feared, there he stood, stepping into the dim light, looking both familiar and foreign. His voice caught her off guard, a mixture of surprise and something else. Was it regret? She felt a shiver run down her spine. James, she responded, the word heavy with unresolved emotions. He took a hesitant step closer, his expression shifting from surprise to apprehension. Yeah, well, the world is smaller than we think, she said, keeping her voice steady, though her heart raced. Inside, she felt an electric current dance between them, an energy that could ignite the past or burn them both. He glanced at the plaque, and Jessica couldn't help but notice the way his eyes dimmed, as if they conjured the weight of memories he'd rather forget. I came to pay my respects to Amanda, he said, almost stumbling over the words. My sister, Jessica responded coldly. Tension between them thickened, palpable like fog hanging in the air. James ran a hand through his hair, clearly struggling for the right words. I know, regrets don't mean anything when you don't act on them, she shot back, her voice sharp. Anger bubbled beneath the surface, fueling her. I was scared, he said, his voice softer now, filled with urgency. I didn't know how to deal with losing Amanda, I thought, she repeated, incredulity lacing every syllable. You thought vanishing would help me. You didn't just ghost me, James. Tears pricked at her eyes, but she blinked them away, unwilling to display her vulnerability. She didn't want him to see how deeply his absence had cut her. He stepped closer, searching her face as if trying to decipher the whirlwind of emotions it contained. I was lost, he admitted, anguish etched on his features. I didn't know how to be there for you. Every word he spoke felt like salt on an open wound. Is that what you call it, sparing me? Because it felt like being thrown into an abyss, alone. I never wanted that, I never wanted to hurt you, he said, his voice raw and earnest. Jessica felt a mix of frustration and sorrow. She wanted to hate him for leaving her, for allowing fear to guide him, yet tucked deep inside, a part of her longed for the connection they once had. Wanting is not enough, James. I understand, and I wouldn't blame you if you wanted nothing to do with me. Trust is earned, not given, she said quietly, her mind racing with thoughts of their shared past. I need to know you're really here. His eyes softened, and for a moment it seemed as if the past wasn't as insurmountable as she thought. I'm willing to be patient, to do whatever it takes to rebuild what was lost. A flicker of hope ignited within her, but it was accompanied by fear, the fear of another loss, of becoming vulnerable again. What if I can't forgive you? Then let me share your burden, let me help carry it. My absence was a mistake, and I want to right it, he said, each word weighted with sincerity. Jessica's breath caught as she processed his declaration. She could see the remorse in his eyes, a flicker of the man she once trusted, yet the anger still lingered. I'm scared, James. Then let's explore it together, he urged, earnestness spilling from his words. I don't expect you to welcome me back with open arms. They stood there in the dim light, tension swirling around them like an impending storm. Deep inside, Jessica felt torn between longing and disbelief. Maybe, just maybe, they could find a way to navigate this tumultuous terrain together. As footsteps drifted down the hallway from the gala, the space around them felt suddenly too small. The laughter of the party faded into a muted backdrop, and in this secluded moment clarity began to seep into the confusion. What if we start small, just talking, getting to know each other again, she suggested hesitantly, her heart pounding. James nodded, his eyes lighting up. I'd like that. They turned their gazes back to the plaque, the names etched into its surface, a bittersweet reminder of loss and perhaps a new beginning. Amanda would want us to find a way through this, Jessica murmured, the thought solidifying in her mind. Then let's do it for her, he replied, a resolute tone in his voice. In that moment, everything felt possible. The memories filled with pain didn't vanish, but now they held the potential for growth, for healing. Let's take it one day at a time, Jessica said, her voice steady as she offered a flicker of hope. Whatever you need, I'm in. Their eyes met, two souls, battered and scarred, now united by a painful past, but with a glimmer of hope for the future. It wouldn't be easy, but as they began to navigate their shared history, Jessica felt the chains of the past begin to loosen. As they exchanged tentative smiles, a flicker of warmth spread through her heart. Perhaps in this moment of vulnerability, they could find the beginnings of a new story. Together, they turned toward the light of the gala, balancing on the tightrope of their emotions, walking the path with fragile steps, ready to embrace what lay ahead, knowing the journey would be worth it, one moment at a time. Jessica's heart thundered in her chest as she moved through the crowded gala. The lights above twinkled like stars, casting a glow on the polished marble floors. Laughter and music filled the air, but all she felt was an overwhelming sense of unease. This event was supposed to celebrate mental health awareness, a cause close to her heart, but it felt like a facade. She scanned the faces around her, searching for a friendly smile, but instead her eyes caught sight of a figure that sent a jolt through her body, James Parker, the man who had once been the center of her world. The man who disappeared when she needed him most. Desperation washed over her, and her feet seemed to carry her toward the back exit without her consent. She spotted Sarah, her coworker, waving at her with enthusiasm, but Jessica needed air, needed escape. She yelled back, her voice barely making it over the din of the gala. As she hurried into the dimly lit hallway, she felt a rush of relief wash over her. The cool air enveloped her like a balm. She leaned against the wall and closed her eyes for a brief second, trying to steady her racing heart. Just then she noticed a plaque mounted on the wall, its polished surface catching the light. Compelled by an invisible force, she stepped closer, reading the names engraved there, each one a tribute to those who had contributed to the event in memory of her sister, Amanda. Her breath caught as she reached the bottom of the plaque, her heart plummeting at the sight of a signature that sent her entire world spinning. James Parker. Her first instinct was to recoil, to step back into the safety of the gala, but her feet stayed rooted to the floor, as if the very name had cast a spell. Memories flooded in good times and bad, laughter intertwined with loss. She could almost feel the warmth of his embrace, the thrill of their shared dreams, and the darkness of his unexplained absence. The sound of his voice sliced through her thoughts, drawing her back into reality. She turned slowly, her breath hitching at the sight of him. James stood there, unsure and tense, as if he were afraid of shattering the moment between them. "James," she managed to say, her voice steady but her heart pounding. "Wow, it's been a while," he said, stepping into the light, revealing the lines of age that had settled into his face, a testament to the years they had spent apart. She asked, crossing her arms and bracing herself for whatever followed. "I came to support the cause," he replied, glancing nervously at the plaque. "In memory of Amanda." Her eyes narrowed as she stepped closer. "You came to support after all this time." Anger bubbled up inside her, fierce and uncontrollable. "I know it sounds terrible," he said, running a hand through his hair, "but I've thought about you every day since I left. I was scared. I didn't know how to be there for you after." "Scared? Is that what you call it?" Jessica's voice trembled with a mixture of fury and hurt. "You disappeared, James. You left me alone, grieving not only for my sister but for you." "I was a coward," he admitted, his voice heavy with remorse. "I thought being distant would help." She shook her head in disbelief. "You thought leaving was the answer. You should have fought for me, for us." The silence stretched between them, thick and suffocating. James lowered his gaze as if grappling with an internal battle. I know I failed you." Jessica's heart faltered. She could see his remorse written across his face, but it didn't erase the years of heartache. "Regret isn't enough, James. I can't ask you to trust me again just like that," he said, his voice cracking. "But I want to show you I've changed." Her mind raced. Hope was a dangerous thing to offer, especially after everything that had happened. "You think you can just step back into my life like nothing happened? I'm not expecting an easy resolution," he said, his gaze never wavering, "but I'd like to try. Starting with honesty, let's talk." The warmth in his eyes was familiar, stirring something deep within her that she thought had long been buried. Part of her wanted to step closer and close the distance, to relive those moments when everything felt right, but a stronger part held her back, a fierce guardian of her heart. She whispered, feeling her resolve beginning to waver. "Maybe we don't go back," he said softly. "Maybe we build something new, something stronger." The idea hung in the air, captivating yet terrifying. Could they really start anew after all the pain? Every thought was tied to the memories, flooding back every laugh, every quiet moment, and every tear. Just then, laughter echoed from the gala, reminding her of the reality waiting just beyond the door. I need time, she finally said, her voice steady but filled with uncertainty. If we're going to do this, I need space to heal. I'm willing to wait as long as you need, he replied quickly, a spark of hope igniting in his eyes. I'll be here, whatever it takes. Time doesn't fix everything, she warned, her voice low. You may feel sorry now, but what happens when the dust settles? I'll fight for us, he assured her, every word laced with determination. Not just now, but every day moving forward. Jessica felt the shards of her heart shifting. The idea of forgiveness was fragile, still unformed. Then we'll work through it together. I'm not asking for forgiveness right away. She took a deep breath, the heaviness of the moment sinking in. You realize that you've changed the entire course of my life, right? I know, and I can't take that back, he admitted, his voice thick with emotion. For a moment they stood in silence, the air thick with tension and unresolved feelings. Jessica felt a flicker of courage, a tiny seed of hope stirring, but the memories crept in, shadowing her heart. What if this was another misstep, another promise that would slip away like so many before? I'll think about it, she finally said, her voice but a whisper. James nodded, respect written all over his face. That's more than fair. With one last look at the plaque, a reminder of both loss and resilience, Jessica turned back toward the entrance. She felt buoyed by a strange mix of hope and trepidation that made her heart race. The shadows of the past wouldn't disappear overnight, but perhaps, just perhaps, there was a way to navigate this unknown together. As they made their way back to the gala, Jessica felt a war of emotions brewing within her. Could she find the courage to rebuild, to forgive, and to trust again? The answer remained uncertain, but standing beside James felt different in that moment. His presence was tentative yet steady, like the first light at dawn after a long, dark night. Maybe they were both just two lost souls seeking their way back. Perhaps the journey ahead would be complicated, but amid the pain, the possibility of healing flickered, a small but powerful spark. With each step back into the glow of the gala, Jessica couldn't help but wonder if they could write a new story, one filled with courage, honesty, and perhaps a love renewed. Jessica stood at the edge of the gallery, heart racing like a drum in a silent room. She scanned the crowd, feeling out of place amid the suits and gowns sparkling under the harsh gallery lights. Laughter echoed around her, swirling like a whirlwind while she felt rooted to the spot, nostalgia clinging to her like a shadow. But the moment she spotted him, everything else faded away. It was James. He looked even more handsome than she remembered, with his tousled hair and that familiar crooked smile. She felt a pang in her chest, a mix of longing and anger. The memory of their last conversation flickered back, illuminating the darkness of that night. He had walked away, leaving her in pieces. As if sensing her gaze, he turned and met her eyes. Time seemed to pause. A sense of panic surged through her. She didn't know if she wanted to run toward him or away. Taking a breath, she pivoted, heading toward the back exit, desperate to escape the onslaught of emotion. The voice called after her, bright and cheerful, Sarah, her coworker. "Where are you going?" Jessica shouted back, her voice tight and strained. Behind her, the music swelled, but she felt as if she were wading through thick fog. She slipped through the door and into a dimly lit corridor where the air was cooler and quieter. She leaned against the wall, trying to calm the storm brewing inside her. The gala felt so far away now, the laughter muffled and faint. This was her moment to breathe, to think, away from the eyes that knew her past. As she walked further in, her attention was caught by a shimmering plaque mounted on the wall. She made her way toward it, drawn in by an invisible pull. In memory of Amanda Miller, it read, the engraving smooth and shining. Her breath caught in her throat as she scanned the names scrolling down. And then her heart stopped when she reached the bottom. There it was, inscribed in bold letters, James Parker. The signature stared back at her, a cruel reminder of the man who had left her when she needed him most. Panic mixed with disbelief, setting her heart racing again. Instinctively, she turned to flee back to the gala, but then the sound of footsteps echoed behind her. She hesitated, frozen in place. She turned slowly, her heart pounding like a jackhammer. There he was again, stepping into the dim light of the corridor, his expression a mix of caution and longing. She wanted to shout, to run, to erase everything. Instead, she was trapped in that moment. "James," she finally breathed, the word heavy with years of unsaid emotions. "I didn't think I'd run into you here," he said, taking a tentative step closer, almost as if reaching for a fragile hope. She replied, anger boiling beneath the surface. His face fell, gravity anchoring the moment in such a way that she could see the guilt etched there. "I know, I'm sorry, Jessica," she repeated, her voice sharp. "That hardly covers it, James. You left me alone to deal with everything." "I was scared," he admitted, staring down at his shoes as if they held the answers. "I didn't know how to cope with Amanda's death, let alone your pain." She shot back, her hands clenched tightly at her sides. "You think that's how you protect someone?" "Yes." "And I was wrong," he said, his voice thick with regret. "I shouldn't have left, and I can't change what I did, but I want to explain." Jessica scoffed, the bitterness rising within her like bile. "Think you can just show up after all this time and make it better with a try?" James stepped forward, bridging the distance between them. "I realize I don't deserve anything from you, but I swear I've changed. I've spent so long regretting my decisions, unable to forgive myself." The vulnerability in his voice tugged at something deep inside her, a flicker of the warmth she once felt for him. But alongside it surfaced the anger, the grief of their lost years. She whispered, her voice cracking. "You don't," he said softly, the sincerity resonating in the space between them. "But I want to prove that I'm here to stay." Jessica felt that flicker become a spark. It was dangerous, it was insanity. But maybe it was also her heart reaching for something, her heart still entwined with his despite the pain. "I'm scared, James," she confessed, her shoulders sagging. "I can't just flip the switch and be okay with this." "I can't ask for your forgiveness right away, but I'll be here whenever you're ready," he replied, a hint of hope igniting in his eyes. One moment they stood in silence, both grappling with ghosts of the past. Memories flooded back, their late-night talks, shared dreams, laughter sprinkled with joy, and then the crushing silence. It was so much to unpack, and she wasn't sure she could bear it. Just then, the walls felt tighter as laughter erupted from the gala behind them. The world was unfolding without them, a reminder of the lives they once led before everything changed. Jessica's heart raced as she turned back to the plaque, Amanda's name glinting in the soft light, grounding her in a bittersweet reality. "She would have wanted us to find a way through this," Jessica murmured, the weight of her sister's memory hanging between them. "Then let's try," he replied, his voice firm yet gentle. Jessica glanced up, meeting his gaze, and felt a rush of conflicting emotions. The anger was still there, but it tangled with an undeniable thread of hope, an itch to reconnect, to build something anew. She hated how easily her heart wanted to believe him. "If we're going to do this, I need time," she managed to say, her voice a whisper. "I get that, I'm in no rush. Just know that I want to support you however you need," he said. With a deep breath, Jessica turned back to face the gala, her heart pounding as if it were trying to drown out the fears flooding her mind. "I'll think about it," she replied, still torn between hope and skepticism. James nodded, looking both vulnerable and resolute. "That's all I ask." As they stepped back toward the gala, Jessica felt the shadows of their past intertwining with the flickers of potential. They had just ignited a fragile dance of trust that felt both terrifying and exhilarating. The laughter and music thundered in as they re-entered the bustling room, but somehow it felt different now. They were two imperfect souls trying to navigate the terrain of their shared history, and underneath the fear, a lingering spark began to grow, a chance for healing, for forgiveness, and possibly for love. When she glanced at the bracelet on her wrist, an old charm Amanda had given her that night so many years ago, Jessica's heart clenched. This was a new beginning, one shaped by loss and resilience. And though the journey wouldn't be easy, perhaps they could find a way forward together. Slowly, amidst the colors and chatter of the gala, she turned back to James, the warmth of hope beginning to melt the ice that had encased her heart. With each step, they moved closer to confronting their shared past, ready to forge a new path together. Jessica felt her heart race as she moved through the crowded gala, an event brimming with laughter and elegance. The chandeliers glittered above, reflecting off the polished floors, but all she could see were shadows of the past lurking at the edges. She scanned the room, and the knot in her stomach tightened as she searched for a familiar face, feeling like she had walked into a scene from a movie she didn't want to be part of. Sarah waved at her, a big smile stretching across her face. Jessica managed a brief nod, but her eyes were on the exit. She needed to breathe. This gala, meant to celebrate mental health awareness, was suffocating her. Every smile felt like a reminder of what she had lost. As she slipped away from the light and laughter, she moved into a dimly lit corridor where the air was cooler and quieter. Like stepping out of a storm and into a safe harbor. Leaning against a wall, she closed her eyes, letting the silence wrap around her like a warm blanket. That's when she noticed it, a plaque mounted on the wall. Its surface gleamed in the low light, drawing her closer as if by magnetic force. The words caught her, and she swayed slightly as she focused on the engraving. A familiar ache flooded her chest as she scanned the rest of the plaque, recognizing the names of donors who had contributed to the cause. And then her breath hitched. The ground beneath her felt like it might give way. Memories crashed over her like a tidal wave of laughter shared, whispered secrets, the warmth of his embrace. And then painfully she recalled the night he left, the hollow ache of abandonment. Years had passed, yet the sting felt as fresh as ever. Panic surged inside her, and she turned, instinct pulling her back toward the exit. But just as she moved, footsteps echoed behind her. She hesitated, dread creeping in as she felt his presence before she even saw him. She turned, her heart pounding, and there he was. James stood in the doorway, uncertainty etched across his features. The boy she had loved, now a man standing before her, both familiar and foreign. She managed, her voice steadier than she felt. "I came to support the cause," he said slowly. Her pulse quickened. How could he dare show up? Support. Anger surged within her, a fire igniting. "No, it doesn't," he said, taking a cautious step closer. "I've thought about leaving ever since I vanished." Jessica's voice rose as the bitterness boiled over. "You think leaving was distance?" he exclaimed, frustration lining his voice. "Every day without you felt heavier. I didn't know how to be there for you after Amanda." She cried, tears stinging her eyes. The silence that followed weighed heavily between them, and Jessica felt the tears threatening to spill. She wasn't sure if she wanted to scream or collapse. James dropped his gaze, pain evident in his features. "I know," he said softly, "and I regret it every day." She shot back, her heart aching. "I hate that I hurt you," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "It was never my intention." A mixture of anger and longing swirled inside her. She had built walls so high to keep him out, and yet here he was, forcing her to confront everything she thought she had buried. "No, I don't expect that, but I'm here now wanting to be part of your life again. Just give me a chance," he pleaded, his eyes locking onto hers with a sincerity that pierced through her defenses. Jessica shook her head, a torrent of emotions threatening to spill over. "What do you want me to say?" "I know, and I don't expect you to, but I want to talk. I want to explain everything, to be honest about why I left," he pressed, desperation creeping into his voice. She asked, her voice trembling. James reached out slightly as if he wanted to bridge the distance, but he hesitated. "You don't know, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes to earn your trust back." The walls Jessica had painstakingly built began to feel fragile, and she struggled with the pull between resentment and a flicker of hope. "You walked away once, James," she whispered, her voice almost breaking. He took a deep breath, his eyes searching hers as if trying to find a path forward. "Because I've spent every day regretting my choices. I was so lost before, but now I see clearly." The tension in the air thickened as Jessica tried to wrestle with her emotions. Part of her yearned for the connection they once had, but the scars of betrayal felt too raw. "I'm scared," she admitted, her voice cracking. "Scared is okay," he replied, his voice softening. "We're human, we all have fears." Jessica hesitated, wavering between the comforting whisper of familiarity and the sharp sting of betrayal. She questioned, guilt and longing fighting for control. "Then I'll respect that. Just know I'll be here ready to support you when you are," he said, sincerity emanating from every word. They stood in silence, the world around them fading, lost in the emotional tug-of-war happening in Jessica's heart. Just then, laughter trickled in from the gala, pulling her back to reality. She felt the urge to flee again, to shield herself, but something held her in place. "I need time," she finally said, her voice steady. "If we're going to do this, I need to know you're serious." "I'll give you all the time you need," he assured her, hope shimmering in his eyes. "No rush." Jessica's mind raced. She glanced back at the plaque, Amanda's name shining in the dim light. A wave of emotion overwhelmed her again. "It's not just about me anymore," she whispered, remembering her sister and the love they had shared. "I understand," James said, nodding earnestly. "She would want us to find our way through this." She looked at him. She saw the man she once loved still full of flaws, but now carrying the weight of regret. It felt surreal to be standing face to face with him again, with all the hurt still lingering in the background. But what if hope could begin here? Could they find a way to bridge the chasm that had ripped them apart? She suggested, her heart pounding. A smile broke across his face, genuine and warm, and for a moment it felt like the clock had turned back. "I'd like that very much," he replied. As they turned toward the hallway that led back to the gala, Jessica felt the weight of her decision looming above her. Every step forward felt monumental, a step into the unknown. Memories of their past danced through her mind, bright moments intermingled with pain, and she felt both terrified and hopeful. Maybe they wouldn't get it right the first time. Maybe the road ahead would be shadowed with uncertainty and emotion, but they would take that journey together. And in that moment, a deep breath filled with courage flowed through her as they re-entered the light and laughter of the gala. Jessica felt a flicker in her heart, a fragile yet strong hope that perhaps they could heal the wounds that had torn them apart. Their story was far from over. It was just beginning again, and somewhere in the chaos of emotions, the possibility of a new chapter shimmered like the stars above. Jessica stood in the crowded gala, her heart feeling like it was about to burst through her chest. Bright chandeliers hung from the ceiling, casting golden light over the elegantly dressed guests. It seemed like a fairy tale, a celebration of life and hope, yet to her, it felt like a suffocating cage. Tonight was supposed to honor her sister Amanda, who had dedicated her life to mental health awareness. But all Jessica could think of was the emptiness that loomed over her. The laughter and chatter echoed around her, but none of it felt real. Instead, all she felt was a sharp reminder of love lost. Taking a deep breath, she forced herself to navigate through the throng, desperate to escape the stifling atmosphere. She moved toward a side exit, seeking solace away from the bright lights and forced smiles. A voice called out. It was Sarah, her colleague, who waved enthusiastically. Jessica shouted back, pushing through the doors that led into a dimly lit corridor. As the door closed behind her, the noise faded into a soft murmur, replaced by silence that felt both relieving and daunting. She walked further into the hallway, wanting to collect her thoughts, and then she saw it, a plaque mounted on the wall, catching her eye. Her heart sank. She stepped closer, reading the names of those who had contributed in her sister's honor. Then, as if the universe were playing a cruel joke, she saw it. The last name etched in sharp, clean letters, James Parker. Time froze. Panic spread through her veins, the familiar ache of betrayal settling back into her chest. Memories of their shared moments surged like a tidal wave, laughter, whispers, dreams, but they were quickly overtaken by painful recollections of his abrupt departure, leaving her alone to navigate the darkness. She felt her breath hitch, darkness creeping back in. Footsteps echoed down the corridor and she froze. Jessica turned just as the door swung open, revealing him, David Parker. The man who had once been a monumental part of her life stood before her, looking both foreign and achingly familiar. His voice pierced the shocked silence, pulling her back into a whirlwind of emotions. Her voice trembled slightly, a mix of surprise and rage bubbling to the surface. "I came to support the event," James said, stepping closer, his face marred with uncertainty. She shot back, her anger electrifying the air around them. "You vanished when I needed you the most. I didn't know how to cope," he admitted, his eyes shimmering with regret. "I thought distancing myself would spare you more pain." The words echoed in her mind, each one cutting deeper than the last. She scoffed. "You chose to run away." James dropped his gaze. "I was scared of everything falling apart. I didn't want to drag you down with my struggles. I thought if I just... Disappearing doesn't make you less of a burden. You left me in the dark, James." Her voice quaked and tears threatened. It wasn't fair that he stood there looking better than she remembered while she felt like a ghost of her former self. "I know," James said, his voice heavy with remorse. "I can't change the past, but I've thought about you every single day since I left." Jessica felt the anger boiling inside her start to mix with an insistent tug of old feelings. Every day without him had been a struggle. It felt wrong to see him now, yet part of her still longed for his presence. "Words are just words, James. How can I trust you again?" "I'm not asking for your immediate trust. I know I broke it," he said, desperation creeping into his voice. "But I want to try to earn it back." The weight of his words hung in the air, and Jessica felt her resolve start to crack. She had built walls around her heart to protect herself, yet here he was, standing before her, vulnerable and raw. "What if I'm not ready? Then we'll take it slow," he said gently. "I'll be here when you're ready." Jessica turned back to the plaque, feeling both anger and a strange flicker of hope. "You don't understand how deep the scars go," she murmured, her eyes scanning the names etched into the metal. "I know I can't take away your pain, but I want to support your healing journey, even if it takes time," James said, his voice steady and sincere. Jessica sighed, catching her breath as emotions swirled within her like a storm. She felt torn between the pain of the past and the possibility of something new. She wanted to feel free to love unconditionally again, but the fear of being hurt gripped her soul. Then a thought struck her. "What if I can't forgive you? Then we'll work through it together," he said, stepping closer, his gaze unwavering. "I'm willing to try, even if it's uncomfortable." Jessica let the weight of his words wash over her. The idea of facing her feelings, of allowing him back into her life, made her throat tight. "I need time," she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Whatever you need, I'll be here," James replied, relief washing over his features. No pressure. They stood in silence, the tension of the past heavy in the air. Jessica's heart raced, torn between fear and hope. Could they really find a way to navigate the complex landscape of their shared history? As laughter echoed from the gala, reminding her of the world waiting just beyond the door, she glanced back at James. He looked vulnerable yet strong, a mixture that intrigued and terrified her. "Maybe we could just start with conversation," she suggested, her voice steadying slightly. "Absolutely," he replied, a gentle smile breaking through the heaviness. Jessica felt a weight lifting, though the journey ahead still felt daunting. They turned back toward the exit, and as they stepped into the light from the gala, a sense of possibility blossomed within her. It wasn't going to be easy, she knew that, yet perhaps there was a way forward. As they moved into the bustling environment filled with music and laughter, Jessica felt the world shift. There was uncertainty ahead, but in this shared moment, she could choose to embrace the unknown. Looking at James, she felt a sense of strength returning. She didn't know what lay ahead for them, but maybe, just maybe, they could learn to heal together. And with that thought, she stepped forward, ready to write the next chapter of their story, one filled with courage, understanding, and the potential for love once more. In that moment, she understood. Healing wasn't about erasing the scars. It was about learning to dance with them, finding rhythm once again in a new melody that had yet to be played. Jessica felt the weight of the gala's excitement pressing against her, a chaotic swirl of laughter, clinking glasses, and bright lights. As she stepped into the crowded hall, it felt like stepping into someone else's fairy tale. She watched as people mingled, their faces glowing in a way hers hadn't felt in years. This night was meant to celebrate progress in mental health awareness, a cause dear to her late sister Amanda. But as she adjusted her dress, anxiety loomed in her chest, heavy and suffocating. A familiar voice called out. It was Sarah, her coworker. Jessica managed to smile but felt panic rising. She needed out of the memories that swirled around her, out of the expectations around her. The whole event felt like a stage set for everyone but her. Jessica replied, forcing her way through the crowd toward the nearest exit. The moment she slipped into the dimly lit corridor, everything behind her faded, the laughter, the music, the clinking of glasses. She leaned against a cool wall and took a deep breath, allowing the stillness to wash over her. Then her eyes fell on a plaque mounted on the wall, catching her attention in a way she couldn't ignore. In memory of Amanda Miller, it read, the letters glistening under a soft light. As she stepped closer, memories flooded her mind like an unwelcome tide. Jessica's heart raced as she began to read the names below her sister's friends, family, and supporters. It was like a punch to the gut, a name she hadn't uttered in years, yet one that echoed through her every thought. The boy she had loved, the man who walked away. Panic surged through her and she turned around, ready to make a run for it. But just as she did, footsteps sounded behind her. She froze, dread pooling in her stomach. She turned slowly, and her heart stopped when she saw him. James stood at the entrance, looking just as she remembered. Tall, with that familiar tousled hair and eyes that still held a depth she couldn't forget. He said, utter disbelief in his voice. She managed, her voice barely above a whisper, a mix of disbelief and anger flooding her senses. I came to support the cause, he replied, stepping further into the corridor, eyes darting to the plaque, then back to her. She shot back, her voice rising with each word. I had my reasons, he said, almost pleading, but she wasn't having it. Reasons. You just left. Jessica felt the tears prick at the corners of her eyes. It had been years, years filled with grief and unanswered questions, and all it took was seeing him again for everything to come flooding back. Silence hung between them, thick and heavy. James looked down, shame etched on his face, and for a moment she felt a twinge of pity. I was scared, he finally admitted, his voice low. Jessica stepped closer, her eyes narrowing as old feelings of anger surged back. You think it hurt less leaving without a word? I was a coward, he said, desperation creeping into his voice. I didn't know how to help us both survive. I thought disappearing was the answer, but it wasn't. The vulnerability in his voice struck her, and for an instant she was trapped in conflicting emotions. She had built walls around her heart to protect herself, yet seeing him again, an old flame flickering back to life, complicated everything. Regret doesn't fix what's broken, James, she said, her voice trembling. No, I don't expect everything to go back to normal, he replied, taking a tentative step closer. But I want to be part of your life again. Trust. The word echoed around them, heavy like the weight of her grief. You think it's that easy? I don't expect anything to be easy, he said softly. But I can't keep running away from you. I want to try, Jessica. I'm not sure you even know what that means, she replied, her heart racing. You're asking for a second chance, but what do I get in return? James ran a hand through his hair, eyes filled with pain. I can't promise that, but I can promise I'll try. Jessica felt tears spill down her cheeks, the weight of all her buried emotions crashing to the surface. She had fought so hard to move on, to let go, but there he stood, the embodiment of her unresolved feelings, challenging the very foundations she had built. She whispered, I do, he said, his voice shaking slightly. I hate that I caused you pain. I never wanted to hurt you. I can't just hand you a map back into my life, she said, starting to shake her head. I know, he pleaded. I'm not asking you to forgive me right away. I just want to be given a chance to show you I can be different. Jessica closed her eyes for a moment, taking a deep breath as her thoughts raced. She didn't want to feel this. The anger was easier, it was a shield, but in that corridor, bathed in dim light and memories, she felt a flicker of something else, hope. She asked, her voice barely a whisper. Then we'll work through it together. I'm willing to wait, he insisted, stepping closer, his urgency palpable. For a moment they both stood there, emotions swirling around them like a tempest. Jessica felt the tears streaming down, the weight of years of hurt and anger crashing down like waves. I just need time, she said finally, her voice shaky but determined. He steadied himself, his tone softening. Whatever you need, I'll be here, just. The sincerity in his eyes echoed through the pain, and something deep within Jessica began to shift. Maybe this wasn't just about her. Maybe it was about what they could rebuild together. Maybe the ache of the past didn't have to be the end of their story. But just as she felt the tide of possibility rising, laughter echoed from the gala, reminding her of the world still bustling around them. Let's step back in, Jessica said suddenly, her voice steadied. Just being here is enough for me, he replied, relief flooding his face. They turned back toward the main event, their hearts intertwined with a fragile thread of hope. As they approached the grand hall, Jessica's breath came in shallow bursts. Her mind raced with possibilities. Could they really navigate this maze of pain and connection? As they stepped inside, a whirlwind of sound engulfed them again. The faces of friends, family, and colleagues shifted focus as Jessica and James stepped into the spotlight of their past. But just as she thought she would feel anchored by the familiarity, a cold dread filled her. She spotted Sarah at the bar, her brows knitted together as she stared in disbelief. The room, Jessica saw her mother, who looked equally shocked to see James. James asked, noticing her sudden hesitation. Yeah, she said quickly, yet her heart raced faster, But before she could step away, Sarah made her way over, her expression expectant but cautious. Jessica turned, her stomach twisting. The judgment in Sarah's eyes made the air feel thick. James, she said, her voice faltering. James Parker. Sarah's voice was incredulous, and Jessica felt the heat rise to her cheeks. She started, but James stepped forward, determination on his face. I'm sorry for how things ended, he said smoothly, his tone sincere. Sarah's tone was sharp, protective. Sarah, it's complicated, Jessica interjected, trying to keep the conversation calm. Sarah echoed, disbelieving. You vanished without a word, and now you expect us all to just welcome you back with open arms. Jessica felt the eyes of the room upon them now, the air thick with tension. she snapped, frustration rising. Sarah questioned, her voice dripping with skepticism. It felt like the walls were closing in, memories swirling around her, and in that moment Jessica's heart sank. Was she really ready to defend him? Could she trust him again? James looked at her, vulnerability etched on his face as he sensed the pressure mounting. "I'm here to support Jessica and honor Amanda's memory," he continued calmly. The harsh reality of the moment hung in the air like a storm cloud. Jessica felt the weight of the world pressing down as she stood there, caught between the past and the present. But just as she opened her mouth to speak, hoping to bridge the gap, a sharp voice sliced through the air. "Then let's see how long you'll stick around," said a stranger joining their conversation, sharp and sarcastic. "You think this is a fairy tale?" Jessica's heart raced, the tension unbearable. "Let's see if you can really make amends or if this is just another act," the stranger taunted. And in that moment, surrounded by the weight of expectation and judgment, with Sarah's worried gaze locked onto her, Jessica felt more lost than ever. This was the turning point, the moment where every decision branched off into uncertainty. Would she take the leap and embrace the possibility of rekindling what had been lost, or would she push him away forever? "This isn't just about you two," Sarah said, her voice trembling slightly. "What about Amanda?" With all eyes on her, Jessica felt the weight of the question crash down. She opened her mouth to respond, knowing that the choice she made in this moment could either lead to a new beginning or shatter what remained of her heart. And just as she found her voice poised on the brink of revelation, the room fell silent and an unexpected figure stepped into the spotlight, ready to change everything yet again. What would they do now? Would the truth finally come out? Would the ghosts of their past resurface, or would this be the moment they set the stage for a new story? The chill in her heart spun faster, and Jessica realized she was standing at the edge of something monumental. What lay ahead was uncertain, and she could feel the stakes rising. Decisions were about to be made, and in that heartbeat, everything transformed, leaving her with only one question: would they sink or swim?